Hi, this is the Divorce Couch. My name is Simone and I'm the divorce coach based in Germany.
Hi, my name is Salma and I'm a divorce coach based in London.
It's still the two of us, but be rest assured, Claire will join us shortly. Today, we'd like to talk to you about how to share the children after divorce. This is not so much the emotional aspect of it, but rather than what are the options. I mean, the parents are splitting, and that will inevitably result in some sort of parenting model. So this is basically in some countries is the care control, and the other one call it custody. I think it depends on where you are. It's, I think, interchangeable. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're way more into the law, even though it's common law, but why don't you begin? And I'm just going to throw in my knowledge, in my experience.
Where do we start? With children, I suppose that is definitely for a lot of my clients, that is always a number one concern.
Sure.
Like, how are we going to, you can split finances, you can sell the home, you can divide up the assets, share your pensions, all of this can be done. Okay, it might not be easy, but, you can't split the children. And, from my perspective, it's always going to be a difficult thing to determine. Like, how do you, in a place when you're really hurting, no matter what your, I suppose, relationship was like, what your marriage was like, the children on some level deserve to have, if they wish to, obviously, a right to see both parents.
Yeah, in Germany, it's in the family law. It says, every child has the right to see both parents.
Absolutely.
And then, interestingly, the parents have the right and the duty.
Yes, duty, absolutely. Yeah. And I think in this case, we're not addressing, situations where the child might be in danger or, maybe open to abuse. We're talking about, just a couple that have decided to divorce because whatever has happened between them. There's no aspects of abuse here or the child's safety being in question.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really tough decision, because for both parties, one parent obviously becomes a primary carer. Usually in these situations, one parent is going to leave the family home and move out. So, there's a chance that they're not going to see their child every morning or every evening or even every weekend for that matter, depending on what the circumstances are. So it can be quite an emotive topic, because there are, I think there's sometimes, I know Tom definitely addressed this in one of our episodes earlier, is that, there are dads out there that do want to be an active, regular part of their children's lives. And this is a real misconception. And I'm not, suggesting for 1 minute that, there aren't people out there in very difficult circumstances as single parents, but it really does. There are lots of options out there to try and make this slightly easier.
So let's jump into these options. So let's just look at it. There's hardly any. Well, no, it depends on I would think probably it depends a lot about your individual family life prior the split.
Yeah.
How the options or the alternatives that are out there apply.
Yeah. Here in the UK, the courts do sort of start at 50-50. Everything starts at 50-50. Okay. The ideal scenario would be that the children get to split their time between both parents.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not always an option. I mean, definitely in my case, that was not going to be the option, because my ex-husband moved a 4-hour drive away from where we currently live. He decided to go back to his hometown. And so that 50-50 split was never going to be logistically possible. So they only see him in the holidays.
Yeah.
you know, and we split the holidays 50-50. Now, there was at the time, you know, some talk around, well, that's not fair because, you know, you have them all year round and, you know, I should get them for the whole entire holidays. But I was reluctant to agree to that, mainly because being a single parent when almost full time, as in my case, is quite tough. And being a full-time parent and working full-time as well means that actually in reality, you're not spending any, well, you are, I won't say you're not spending any quality time, but it's pretty full on.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
more driven, right? It's more driven by making it through the day, and
yeah.
it's, you know,
So
it's
for
fast.
me, having time in the holidays meant that I was forced to, in some ways, take time off during the holidays so that I could actually spend some quality time with my children where I wasn't running back and forth from the office. And so I completely understand his perspective that, you know, he doesn't get to see them during term times. We did try to talk about other options, you know, where, you know, maybe he could come down on 1 month, one weekend a month and potentially spend the weekend with them. But it just never was logistically possible because it wasn't going to be possible for the children to travel up on a Friday evening, come back on a Sunday evening, and then be ready for school on the Monday. That just was, they were too young to do that. They would have been exhausted. You know, the week at school would have been just too difficult for them as adults.
If you look at those couples that, I mean, if we do 50-50 and I'm picking up on what you just said, you know what, you have to have certain requirements ticked. I mean, you'd have to be on really amazing speaking terms. I mean, depending on how young the children are, there are things that are being lost. You know what, there are play dates, there is sports, you know what, you have to be on speaking terms in order for the child not to be
caught in the middle,
caught in between, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's where that communication aspect is really important. You know, if you are not on cordial communication terms, which, you know, let's be honest, it's not always possible, depending on, you know, where you are emotionally and what sort of happened during the breakup. But there are other options.
But right? Then who's there to decide, right? You know what, imagine you're the judge and then both want 50-50 and then
but this is where I think, you know, now in the world that we live in now, you know, there are lots of family apps available. There are lots of other forms of communication that can make it possible. Like, for example, you know, things like the Family Wizard, which you can sort of have your calendar up, which allows both parents to sort of slot in, decide, you know, if something comes up, you know, you might need to change plans, you know, the weekend that you have or the weekend that your partner has. There is a level of flexibility that is absolutely required. And there is a level of sort of accommodating to a certain extent each other in order to make it as easy as possible for the children to go between essentially one home and another. And
but do you I mean, no, there's a question here. Do you really think that if two parents are incapable of even greeting one another, it is possible to have a 50-50 living arrangement? No, I don't think so.
I do think so. I think if you would have to plan it and organize it, because, you know, 50-50 just means that you've decided up front that, right, okay, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be 50-50. It can be, you know, 4-3, you know, it can be a week one way, a week another way. It can be 4 days or weekends. It really depends on what works for you.
Okay, but then let me just quickly step out of this conversation. So there is 50-50, which probably everybody would think, okay, but there's 50% of the week. So basically midweek on Wednesday, the child transfers. So we look at math. It can be anything. It can be anything. You and your partner, best case scenario, decide what suits your calendar.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think what suits the logistics. And then, you know what, you can come up with your own scenario, what works best for the children. I think the more a child, I'm probably of a different opinion than you, because I think the more a child is going back and forth really regularly. I mean, think of all the tasks even a child has, you know what, and we have our own, you know what, working commitment, etc. There's so much exchange of information, because you know what, I realize that I can plan as much as I want to. It so often goes wrong. I mean, we just had these very, very hot days and the kids were sent home. So then, you know what, you need to know, then you cannot rely on the other parent is home then, because you know what, it's very flexible process. So I'm thinking, I mean, the 50-50 model, you have to be on really amazing speaking terms. I think you have to have a very comforting environment working. So yeah, so I find it difficult to do 50-50 if you're not on speaking terms. But then who am I to judge? I just feel that depending on how your family life was prior, the split will most likely probably determine what happens next. And as you said, there are all these different now with digital apps, parenting apps. It's much easier now to stay in tune with communication, right? You can just basically, it's a bit like a Google Drive, right? You know, but you have this one platform where you communicate. There's something else that we haven't touched on. There's also something that is called, not that it was something for my ex-husband, I kind of like that idea. It's called nesting. Yeah. So basically you have one home and the children remain steady in their environment, whereas their parents go back and forth. Yeah. And then I had to laugh, because which applies to this nesting, because I see you adults probably say, I'm not crazy, I'm not going to go back and forth all the time. Well, think about, this is 50-50 for your child. Yeah. This is basically exactly what your child is doing. If you are doing 50-50 as the parents, the 50-50 model, the other way around for the child is they now have to go back and forth. You know what? And that just requires...
I mean, I have to be honest, I don't think I could have done that on a regular basis. It is something that I did offer my ex-husband on this agreement that I was trying to put into place, because what would happen when my children were very young, not so much now, is that they would come home from the holidays knowing that they're not going to see their dad again, potentially for another 3 months, or, you know, at least 2 months. And my daughter would be very upset, you know, be very tearful. You know, I miss daddy. I want to, you know, I'm not going to see him again till Christmas, or, excuse me. And so I suggested this agreement where maybe my ex-husband could come down the last weekend in every month. Yeah. And because knowing that he was coming from such a distance, and then I said to him, well, what we could do is potentially you stay at my house. And, you know, lucky for me, I have, because I live close to family and friends, I said, there'll always be somebody that I can go and spend the weekend with, and I will move out. I have to admit, I did that purely, I made that offer purely for the children. It wasn't something that I was 100% comfortable with, having somebody else in my house, having access to my things, you know, and so it does, I think there is a little bit of work to be done around that, because, you know, one of the really important things that I found after the divorce was making the space my own. You know, it needed to be my space. It needed to be my home. You know, whether this was the family home beforehand or you've moved out somewhere completely new, depending on your circumstances. But, you know, there is a huge amount of work that goes into sort of reclaiming your space and, you know,
Yeah,
and then to allow somebody into that space. I think there is a certain emotional aspect to that you would need to work on. But yes, absolutely. If it works for you, I think it's possible in the short term. You know, when you're in that transition phase where one party may not necessarily have somewhere where they can take the children to, or they're still in the process of buying or renting or moving, or they've had to move a bit further out. It is possible. But
yeah.
yes, absolutely. I can see that
That is
would
difficult.
involve
Yeah.
you to take a little bit of, you know,
Right.
planning. I mean, one of my biggest fears was, oh my God, I might leave my credit card bill out or something, and he might just come across it or anything. Like, you know, when it's your home, you leave personal documents around and you leave personal things around. And so I did, you know, on the couple of weekends that he did take us up on that offer, I did spend a huge amount of time tidying things away and making my house like as, I don't know, risk-free. I felt in my
It's kind of like if you have Airbnb people, right, in your home, you would also
yes,
put things away. And I'm sure after a while you get used to it, right? You then
yes,
would just put certain things away. And I think the most difficult thing here is it's not two people when you have children. It's not two people. It's much easier to split, but it's now basically split. I don't know how to put this, but the children are part of this. So whatever discomfort applies to you as a mother or to you as a father will apply to the children. And you know what? Following that, the welfare of the child is paramount. It is most likely that you as the parent have to probably step back in order to provide the child the best possible outcome. And I have a friend, and they do this, and I think that's quite fascinating. She's working and she's leaving very early in the morning. So then the ex-husband comes in to her home and then stays with the children until they leave for school. So they have a very fluent in and out. I mean, they each have their place, and the children now go back and forth. And this is then basically what I suggest. And this is absolutely not what I have with a father being in another continent or your ex-husband being 4 hours away. If you want this to work, you have to stay. So basically, best option would be you be neighbors or you be in the same building. So the child then can go in and out. And I think the further one moves away, the clearer to me it is, the more difficult will be the logistics from the kid's perspective.
yes.
And they do have their friends, and it is, and I mean, I see this with my son, with a friend who is outside of the place where we are living in. It's very difficult, right? Then to get there and back. So it's an awful lot of logistics that you have to consider, I think, when you make the decision. How are we going to split the children? I think the classic would be basically every 2 weekends, the children switch. I'm going to throw this out there. You mentioned that the holidays are being split half. The public holidays, vacations will be split. Is there anything else that will be
things like I think, you know, another thing that we have to sort of start thinking about once we are not together as a family is sharing birthdays and sharing like whatever your, you know, important events are. Like in our case, you know, there's Eid, or there might be Christmas or Easter. Like, you know, how do you want to share these? You know, if you're not in a position, and I most definitely wasn't, to say, let's go out together on one of the children's birthdays.
Break fast. Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, that just was not something that I was comfortable with. And, you know, I just couldn't do that. You know, I could not. And to be fair, I don't think it's anything that my children ever requested. But I would have been more than happy to share the weekend of the birthday. You know, I have them one day and he has them the other day. And, you know, same with Eids, where I suppose we're lucky in the sense we have two Christmases. So we, you know, generally don't have to argue about, like, you know, we just think, well, there's two, you have them one and you have them the other one. And then, you know, neither of them are any more significant than the other. So
it might be difficult in a different culture, right?
Yeah,
you know, with only one Christmas Eve. But then you have to, again, I think if it doesn't come natural, or is it naturally? Of course, it's a Y, let's just drop the Y. And then I think, you know what, the best option is then just to go, okay, but then it's every other year, right? Yeah. Then, you know what, if that is very difficult to then say, we split Christmas Eve and then you swap.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even, you know, split the day. You know, something as significant as Christmas, where it is only one day. Yes, you might have to change your normal routine of, you know, what you do in the morning and afternoon and evening. But if you know, I have somebody, a client who what they do now, they open their presents on Christmas Eve, they have breakfast in the morning, and then the other parent picks them up for lunch. And they rotate.
Yes, we did. Okay, I thought, you know what, I thought, you know what, because this is why I was cringing. I said, you know what, on maybe let's say on the 25th of December, I think, as much as I understand that both parents want to spend time with the children, that sounds so hectic and that takes away so much presence for the child to be in the moment, to enjoy. I think I'd rather than go for, if you're really arguing, if you really think it's the best interest of the child to split a child on one particular important day, then I think, you know what, do it every other year, because, you know what, then the child, you know what, is already, and at first the child learns it's not about me because it's about your parents. And I think that's always something we have to consider, right? It's not so much, you know, the child has to be taken into account as well. And you know what, to rip them out of an emotion or of a time that is very, it's an intense. There are certain days, public holidays, they are very, very intense, right? Because they come with a lot of preparation and all that, you know, and to then just say, you know what, you're under surveillance, you know what, after three hours, you know what, you go, you know what, after 2 hours, you already look at the time. And I said, you know what, you have to stop, pack your things and go. I find that difficult. And I think, you know what, at one point, if the children become old enough to say, you know what, I'd rather, you know, spend my time here or there, I am now willing. And then once they are old enough to have their own friends, there's a good chance that they don't want to see their parents anymore. And I think that is very, very important for all your parents out there. There is a time where their friends are really more important than us. And I think it's then time to let that development happen and evolve, instead of just being all rigid and said, no, but this is my time.
Yes, I think that's a thing about child arrangements, the agreements that you make. They aren't set in stone. Like, you know, with your finances, you divided the property, you've got a clean cut, as we call it here in the UK, and there's, you know, hopefully there's no comeback, right? With the child arrangements, there is going to be a constant change, adjustment, accommodation as the children get older. You know, the after school clubs change, their sort of lifestyles change, and you have to have this understanding that actually at some point the agreement you have in place is no longer going to work, and it's going to need tweaking. And you've got to be open to that. You know, the children, you know, okay, you had the children every weekend and 2 evenings a week. Okay. Maybe that's by the time they get older and they've got different interests and they've got different things going on in their life, maybe that's not going to work for them anymore. And so you're going to have to, you know, one of the things that we set up was a sort of an agreement, like a contract, where we placed every year. I would put mostly myself, because because of the kind of work that I was doing at the time, I needed to plan ahead in terms of holidays. I couldn't just make these arrangements, because my work was very project based. So I had to look at, okay, what am I doing, and can I take time off at this time? Can I take time off it? So I would place my calendar in this document at the beginning of the year, try to put in as much detail as possible, and put in the potential options that I needed to take time off. And then that was with the intention of reviewing that every year.
But you know what? I'm just thinking about a client. And then I'm thinking about, I'm not only speaking for her, I'm speaking also for the children. I think at one point it needs to be in the book. I think everybody involved needs to have some sort of, we have to calm down. It needs to be, if you say, after a year, let's see what has changed, especially after the summer break, right? If the after school clubs change, but you have to have, or I'm suggesting, in order to calm down, right, to ease into the new life with 2 sets of homes, something that everybody can rely on, to just not constantly be in this alert state. Oh shit, where am I going to go? Yeah, am I here or am I there? Is the parent picking up the child today or not? You know what? So that everybody can kind of like ease into the new schedule, knowing that this is what we go by.
Discuss things. If it's at all possible for you guys to have a conversation about this, discuss it. If it's not possible for you to discuss these things,
it's going to be the judge.
Use a judge, use a tool, it's that where you can have like a shared calendar, use technology, use WhatsApp, email, whatever works for you.
But
make sure things are agreed.
But this is then 2 sets of things, right? One thing is, how do you come to an agreement? That is best case. So to wrap it up, best case scenario is whatever you choose to do, and if you agree upon it, that's fine. I think that's one of the best jobs the judge can have. What if you submit the divorce papers, okay, they're totally in line with what they want. That's the best thing, I think, for a family judge to see that.
Yes.
If you cannot decide, and I think,
and most importantly, I think, and this applies to both parties, is do not take everything personally. Try to put your ego aside and see it from the view of the children. Because sometimes what can happen, I know this was something that I dealt with in the beginning, little things like, when you phone your children when they're with the other partner, and they don't want to talk to you, not because they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to you because they're busy doing something. And that's how children are, right? They're in the moment. They're busy doing something. They're watching a movie. They're doing a puzzle, or and I would put the phone down and think, oh, they don't want to talk to me.
Like, I know.
Oh my God, did their dad tell them they can't talk to me? And, all of these things start going off in your head. And it's none of those things. It's the fact that they're kids and they're busy in the moment. And so everything that we, do, if your child doesn't want to see you one evening, the child wants to change it, they don't want to come one weekend because they want to be out with their friends, it's not personal. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. That's a really important lesson to learn, that sometimes we have to step back and not get so upset about certain aspects. Yes, there will always be situations where we can get upset about it, and they're valid, and we need to address them. But there will be lots of situations where we are just taking it too personally.
I think in our next episode we want to talk about, a lot has to do with control, right? Because you take it personally because you kind of think, it's my way or the highway, and then but certain things are not, because it's a system. This is not only just you, this is now a future which is basically now changed, and
Yeah.
things will change, and then
Everything will change.
Yeah.
Everything will change. You'll have to have new routines. You will have new sort of, like sort of responsibilities. Everything will change, and you have to be willing to adapt that and embrace that.
Okay.
Because
does it hurt? Will it be difficult? 1000%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So best case scenario, we leave you to this. You might find the split, of course, difficult, but if you really want to follow what's in the best interest of the children, figure something out for the child to see. It's cool with mom and dad. Whatever is cool with you will be cool for the child.
Yeah.
The more difficult it becomes, and the more likely you're going to go to court, the more difficult it will be for you to swallow the pill, because you'll be decided by a third party, and it will be most likely more difficult for the children, because they see that mom and dad cannot decide on something which is actually about me.
Yeah.
So, and parenting models, it's all it's all possible.
Yeah. And there's lots of different models.
Yeah,
there's lots of different models out there on the internet to consider, whether you're sharing weekends, whether you're sharing weeks, whether you're doing it, alternating days. So, have a look at those models. Definitely sort of play around with different models. Just because you've agreed to do one thing, if it's not working for you, discuss it, talk about it. If it's not working for the kids, look at different options. Yeah, because there is no rule book. Okay, as far as I'm concerned.
That's true. But how about this? Can we just add? And I think it should fit your schedule. You're not all of a sudden changing into a new lifestyle. I mean, as much as you feel, then but if one has been working full time and the other hasn't, it's most likely that it's not easy to all of a sudden have a child 50%, but instead of then having the child sit in your office on the iPad just because you really wanted the 50%, I think the child is better off to then go at home, and then maybe there is a dinner, right?
Yeah.
But also don't be too rigid, and then look at your circumstances.
Be sensible, be sensible about it. This is not about you getting back at the other person. This is not about you having a one-up or winning the fight. This isn't anything to do with that, right? Yeah. This is to do with, and I know, having the children in the center of the decisions. Yeah, not in the middle. Not in the middle of a bun fight, but having their best interests at the center of whatever it is that you two, and don't ever forget that this decision to separate was not made by the children. No. This was made by two grown adults that have realized that for whatever reason, they can not continue in that relationship.
Yeah. And even if one person feels it has nothing to do with them, it's the other person. Just, and then I just realized, ask yourself, would I be comfortable with this new arrangement? If you're not comfortable, I would think your child wouldn't be either.
Yeah.
We leave you with this. Subscribe, leave a comment if you wish. Good luck on your journey. You can do it. And see you next time. Bye.
Then, bye.